All right, let's get into it.
In science news that makes you want to stare at a wall for a few hours, brain organoids, yes, the tiny human brains you can grow from stem cells, grow better in the presence of a human heartbeat. Yes, brain organoids, the tiny, adorable, miniature versions of the human brain. And it's important to note that they don't normally have any kind of sensory input unless you give them sensory input. Yes, those are eyes, and they can occasionally grow eyes under the right conditions. They do sense light under those circumstances because eyeballs are part of your nervous system. Now, if you want to give them sensory input, you would have to attach another organoid to them, like a spinal organoid. Or, in the case of when they're used for computation, they give them electric shocks, and those are symbolic of something that they would encounter in the virtual world. But researchers hypothesize that the presence of a heartbeat would improve their development, and it seems to be the case. Now, some important notes: this is a preprint, but it is coming out of a well-respected lab in Germany. One of the issues with brain organoids is that they still remain fairly small, just a few millimeters across, and if you want to have a good model that's comparable to a human being for research, you're going to have a very complex brain organoid, or at least as close to human complexity as you can get. Organoids can be a stand-in for human beings when it comes to research, and yes, they can also be used for computation. In either case, you want it to be as close to an adult brain as possible. Astrocytes are human cells that are involved in the structural stability, development, and maintenance of the human nervous system. Enriching brain organoids with astrocytes could make them more structurally sound and develop more completely, and that seems to be the case, but it is really the case when they listen to a heartbeat. And astrocytes alone did lead to more structural complexity and more activity on behalf of the brain organoids, but with astrocytes and a heartbeat, they really did. And you can see the difference between the control and the heartbeat model in terms of how active they were. And these were not organoids that were trained to do anything. This is just the random firing of their neurons all on their own. Again, they have no way to perceive the heartbeat. This is just their development in the presence of it. Now, this does not indicate consciousness or intelligence. It does indicate that a heartbeat may be important to our fetal development. It would be interesting to see brain organoids compared from an animal that hatches in an egg, like, say, a bird to a mouse, and see if heartbeat is necessary. Now, one of the things that does bother me about this is that if we end up using biological neural networks, so brain organoids in servers, will we have to raise them with a heartbeat in order to make them the most efficient? And to be honest, if I have to sing a lullaby to the server rack, I am out.
That is actually disturbing, and I can imagine a future if this does become a thing, and this may be a couple hundred years from now, but I could imagine a future where they encase it in like an artificial womb and give it these sounds to help stimulate it and make it perform better. If things like this continue to develop, it's going to be a grotesque future, I think.
Did China's mainstream media just tell the public not to respond to extraterrestrials? This image has been circulating everywhere lately. I dug into it, and the reality is actually pretty interesting. So the notice says, do not respond to extraterrestrials on your own. And here's what I found out about it. So this is not a new emergency directive that was released. It is referring to an update from the International Academy of Astronautics. And they're an organization that's been developing guidance for SETI researchers for decades. The recommendation is not aimed at just random people. It's aimed at scientists and governments in the event that humanity actually detects extraterrestrial intelligence. One thing that did surprise me is that this part is real. The updated recommendations do say that any response should not be sent unilaterally, and instead there should be an international consultation with the United Nations playing a central role. The reasoning is actually pretty straightforward. If humanity ever receives a genuine extraterrestrial signal, deciding how or whether to respond or not, it wouldn't be a single decision based on one single observatory or one single country. Now, what I couldn't verify is whether this claim was some sort of extraordinary announcement from Chinese media because of a current event. But the image appears to be summarizing a real update to this long-standing scientific guidance. But the framing online makes it sound like it's connected to some new discovery. However, with that being said, I do find it to be a very interesting update at a very interesting time.
So basically they updated the terms, hey, whenever you communicate with aliens, no longer do that on your own. You have to now have a governing agency along with it. That's what it sounds like to me.
Sometimes I think my phone is listening to me, almost like monitoring me, especially after what just happened. Now I know this might sound paranoid, but maybe it's happened to you too. So last night I'm on FaceTime with my son and he tells me that he went to a movie, except there was a person in the theater who he described as a chud. I've heard this description before with younger people. I don't know what it means, so I asked him. And he says there's no specific meaning to the word chud, that it's more or less like a person, in this case, who talked through the whole movie, left a few times, came back, but every time he was in the theater, this guy he described as a chud, he was talking during the movie. Okay, so I kind of get a meaning of that word, that slang word chud. So this morning I wake up and I get a notification on one of the movie apps of some old horror movies because I've been looking them up. And wait till you see the first movie that's recommended. It's called Chud. Yeah, the movie is called Chud. It's about humanoid monster type creatures that live in the sewers. So last night my son uses the word chud, the slang word chud. I ask him to explain it to me. He does. Then this morning, one of the movie apps I follow give me a recommendation for this from the 80s, a movie called Chud. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, but this is really weird.
I don't know what it is that's listening to my thoughts directly, whether it be my phone, the television, the PlayStation. I don't know what it is. Well, thinking about it, it's probably either Wi-Fi or cellular data. There's probably something there that's able to read your brain. But man, the number of times where I was just thinking of something and it'd be advertised on YouTube or Amazon, the number of times is almost uncountable at this point. Let me know if you've ever experienced something similar. Hey, if you haven't done so already and if you're enjoying the show, give it a like, and if you're new to the channel, subscribe. I upload a video like this every Monday through Friday, early in the morning. And for everyone that's made it this far, thank you so much for supporting the channel.
You've probably heard the rumors that billionaires have astrologers and they help them with their life and when they should be releasing projects and what they should be doing. And I've been deep diving my friends, my family birth chart for the past like 3 weeks or a month. My tits have been blown off. Like, I grew up, I like a horoscope in the back of a magazine and I know what my sun sign is, and then I knew my big three. When you look at somebody's birth chart, like, it almost like gives me goosebumps and kind of like creeps me out, but I have a lot of Pluto in my chart, so I like it. I keep coming back for more. But it's like freaky deaky. Like, that's where all the answers are. It's all the answers, okay? And like, I still have my feet tethered to reality. Like, I'm not gonna, I don't know, like change my entire worldview or something. But I got like close to doing that because the way that I look at my birth charts and other people's, and everything's in there. And you can look at it too and be like, me and this person, what types of conversations would we have, or where would we disagree or not understand each other's perspectives? Like, you can see it all when you look at somebody's entire birth chart. And it like almost, I'm not high right now, but if I were to get high and think about this, it would almost have me thinking that like maybe this is evidence for that simulation theory. Maybe we do in fact live in a simulation, and that whole screen where you're like building a sim or your character or your avatar, that's just you being born. And all of the things like the stats and the skills that you're selecting for your character, that's just how the stars are moving at the time of your birth. And I don't know if it falls into like a religious category or a scientific one, or like what you would categorize like astrology as a field. But let me tell you, like whatever it's categorized as, it needs to be taken more seriously. Or maybe it doesn't, and it's supposed to be like, whoever's open to it is open to it and just like leave it for the rest. But yeah, it's all in there and it's cool. But in the way that I remember when I got diagnosed with ADD, I was like, do I even have a personality, or is it just like ADD? Or when you take like a good personality quiz and you're like, oh my god, I thought this was my thing that I did, but it's personality quiz. Really looking at your birth chart, it gives you this feeling of like, who even am I then? Because this just figured it all out from like a birth chart.
You'll have to let me know what you guys think of astrology, because truthfully, I really do not know much about it. One of the reasons why I kind of don't really pay too much attention to it is because, like she said, there's a lot of celebrities that talk about it and say that they plan their stuff around it, and that's what makes them more or less successful, and that kind of makes me believe that it's an advertisement to keep you engaged, to keep you distracted, and to keep your attention averted from something more important and or more worthwhile that'll actually do something beneficial. Now, that could be the completely wrong way of looking at it. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, and if you have any input about astrology, please feel free to share. And if you would like me to do a little bit more digging into it, let me know as well.
Hey, here's more things I want to know. I want to know about the island forts off the coast of India. India is my Rome, my other Rome. I've got a few Romes if you've been following me. These island fortresses are absolutely insane. I've talked about one before, Janjira Fort. I wanted to know how many other forts there are, and there's a few, and they're all insane because they're all built on the water, on an island, in times without modern tools. Built with hammers, chisels, flip-flops, and a few fishing nets. The builders of these islands had to work at the mercy of the tides to get things done, and some of these things go right into the water. How are we doing this? Okay, what are we talking about? They can't even get my coffee right at the local coffee shop, and these guys are building into the water with the tides going in and out to perfection. Every piece of limestone, every piece of laterite, every piece of granite, every stone had to be carried out by boat to these islands, and we're talking about heavy stones. These forts are not light. The logistics of these situations is just incomprehensible. Sindhuberg Fort alone is 48 acres large. These forts didn't have fresh water, so there had to be a hydrological understanding of building freshwater wells that could stand the test of time, mixed with the thickness of the defense of the fort. So if it got hit by storms or battery, it wasn't going to rupture the fresh water. This is building on a level that supersedes what a lot of people even attribute to what a island fort could even be. And it's not like they build these and they lasted a little bit of time. They're still here today, hundreds of years later. How many forts are out there? Well, let me tell you. Marud Janjira Fort, started in the 15th century by fishermen, fortified in the early 1600s by Malik Ambar. Sindhuberg Fort, built in 1664. Vijaydurg Fort, built in the 12th century, and the Maratha rebuilt it from 1653 to 1664. Suvarnadurg Fort, built in 1660. Underi Fort, built in 1680. Padmadurg Fort, built 1676 to 1678. Fort Anjadiva, built in 1505. And Diu Fortress, built in 1535. A lot of these forts were only built in a year, as the narrative goes, which is bananas to me because the local coffee shop takes at least 2 years to be built, and it's a box that's maybe 1,000 square feet. But what I want to know is, how did they plan these water wells out? How did they figure out to keep these wells completely void of salt water, being out in the middle of the salt water, even with storms and tidal waves and tides and anything that could happen? These freshwater wells are incredible, not to mention how incredible the forts are in general. How did they do it? Because I don't have an answer and I don't have any construction photos, but I want to know. You know what? I'm going to go build one for myself. I've got a hammer, I've got my chisel, and I got my flip-flops. Let's go. But what I really want to know, and I know you want to know, is who on that list is going to jail first in America.
It looks like he's getting more and more tired asking who on that list is going to jail first in America. And I have to say, those are very impressive. If they got built within a year, that's incredible. These are one of those moments where I wish time traveling was real, where there was some kind of virtual time travel experience so you could go back in time and see how something like this was actually done, because that's impressive.
What do they say in 1884 about fat people? How to get less fat. Look what it says. And I inherited this book from my late father-in-law, by the way. If there's one thing that you hang on to, it's books, man. I'm telling you, they don't make them anymore. Everything's going digital. They can rewrite history. Let's have a book on hand, all right? So, fat people, food to reduce their fleshiness. Again, they don't mince words. Speaking of the plan to reduce fat people to a reasonably stout and healthy condition, says, if any reader is growing too fat for comfort, he may possibly find the following suggestions valuable. There are 3 classes of food: the oils, sweets, and starches, the special office of which is to support the animal heat and produce fat, having little or no influence in promoting strength of muscle or endurance. Now, you got to read some of these a few times, like you take some imagination, they word it interestingly, right? If fat people, therefore, would use less fat and more of lean meats, fish, and fowl, less of fine flour and more of whole products of the grains, except the hulls, less of the sweets, particularly in warm weather, and more of the fruit acids in a mild form as in the apple, sleep less and be less indolent, and labor more in the open air, the fat would disappear to a certain extent at least with no loss of real health. So they're saying, get active, eat less fine sweets and candies, have apples. And notice too, it says about warm weather and cold weather. Like, we are supposed to eat different foods depending on the season, eh? And not just because of like what's in season and what's out of season, but there is also something to be said about food that's trucked in from thousands and thousands of miles away. Some people think the food grown and harvested and raised closest to you has like a totally different energetic effect on you than stuff that's grown like when we ship in frickin' blueberries from Chile. Not perhaps ideal, or cows from like Brazil. Like, unless you live there, like, you should try to eat stuff as close to you as possible, not because of the climate or emissions or anything like that, but because of the energies. I'll tell you more about it in part 2. Comment for more info out of this freaking book, man. 1884, can you believe that?
I personally do not think that I've gotten any... I personally don't think that that's changed too much. Staying active, eating less sweets, and eating healthier has always been the norm. And I think eating more local resource produce is better for you than eating outsourced. But overall, eating less sweets and healthier is just gonna be better for you, especially if you're active. I don't think that this was really any new information. At this point, I think he just wanted to make a jab at fat people, and I feel kind of offended.
If you think time travel is impossible, here are some more stories that might change your mind. Part 3. Project Pegasus. So, according to attorney Andrew Basiago, he claimed that during the 1970s, he participated in this classified program called Project Pegasus, which involved teleportation and time travel. According to Basiago, he was recruited into the project as a child and transported through experimental devices developed using research that was connected to Nikola Tesla. One machine supposedly created a tunnel through space, allowing participants to teleport between facilities in New Jersey and New Mexico. Another device allegedly allowed Basiago to travel backward through time. He claimed that he was sent to Gettysburg during the Civil War and even appears as a young boy in this surviving photograph taken at the location in 1863. He also claims that the government used its technology to view possible future events and already knows the identities of future American presidents. Paul Amadeus Dynock. This is the story of a man who traveled through time without physically moving anywhere. Paul Dynock was a teacher from Switzerland who fell into a coma during the 1920s. He later claimed that while his body remained unconscious, his consciousness entered the body of another man named Andreas Northam, who was living in the year 3906. The people of the future reportedly realized that Dynock was experiencing something they called a conscious slide, a condition in which someone's mind temporarily enters a body in another period of time. During his experience, Dynock witnessed thousands of years of future human history. He described global wars, catastrophic population loss, the colonization of Mars, and a devastating conflict that nearly destroyed our civilization. Humanity eventually recovered and developed a peaceful global society guided by a new stage of spiritual and psychological evolution. And after awakening from his coma, Dynock recorded everything he remembered in a collection of writings eventually published as Chronicles from the Future. Last up here, the Chronovisor. This is an alleged machine said to be capable of turning the past into something resembling a TV broadcast. The story centers on Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk who claimed he had worked with a secret team of scientists, allegedly including names like Enrico Fermi, to construct this device back in the 1960s. According to Ernetti, historical events leave behind electromagnetic traces that never completely disappear. By tuning into these signals, the chronovisor could supposedly display moments from the distant past. Ernetti claimed the team witnessed speeches from ancient Rome, along with theatrical performances from ancient times, and even watched the crucifixion of Jesus. The machine was eventually dismantled and believed to be hidden away in the Vatican secret archives, because whoever controlled it could uncover nearly every secret in human history.
Now, I've heard of the Chronovisor. The other two stories I've not heard of, but the Chronovisor is my ideal version of what time travel could possibly be. It would be a box that allows you to travel through light itself to see what happened in the past. You would not be able to travel to the future with this device. You would only be able to travel back through time and visually. You cannot physically travel through time. You can only see what happened in the past. I really like the theory of the chronovisor being an actual thing because it makes the most sense to me. Now, the first story, him traveling back in time and then there's a photo of him being a little boy, I don't know about that one. Now, the second story, that is an interesting one that I've never heard before, but I really like the idea that there's this thing called a conscious slide, that when you're in a coma and there's another person in a coma in the future, you can slide into his conscious state and become that person for who knows how long. That is very interesting. Again, I've never heard of this story. I'll actually look into this a little bit deeper because I'm curious about those books. But that was a new one to me and a very interesting concept.
Power outages in areas with multiple data centers? Yeah, that's happening. As a matter of fact, we've had scattered power outages here in Reno, Nevada, where I live. And a couple days ago, it affected me. I was without power too, along with a big part of downtown and the AAA baseball stadium during a game. Now me, when it happened, I just took a nap, and it lasted a little less than an hour. The worst part was the air conditioning went off, but it got people in this area to start talking about this. We used to get power outages in the summer once in a while because a lot of people do use their air conditioning. But since these multiple data centers have come in or have been being built, we're getting a lot more of them. So data centers need a lot of power taken from our power grid. They need a lot of water, fresh drinking water. And while the powers to be think this is just okay, that it's a necessary thing, the people in the areas of these data centers are the ones who are losing power, and sometimes the water gets a little shaky. And this is just the beginning. So I want to know, if there are data centers in your area, have you experienced more power outages than normal? Or maybe it's just happening here, although I doubt it.
It's crazy to believe that we have people in power that allows data centers like this to happen and cause these frequent blackouts. And I also do not just blame data centers. There's more to it than just data centers, but that is the biggest culprit at the moment. Another thing to take into consideration with using fossil fuels would be electric vehicles. Now, do not get me wrong, I actually like the idea of an electric vehicle. I just do not agree with the cost that they are. I think they're way too expensive for the mileage that you get out of them. But they use fossil fuels indirectly. If you plug in your car to the power grid and that power grid is using coal to burn to produce your electricity, then you're using extra electricity now, which is burning more fuel to power the electric car. So there's more to it than just data centers at this point that we have to look at overall that's affecting the grid. Because when electric cars were really starting to pick up, California, or LA more specifically, was having rolling blackouts because of the electrical grid was being weighed down by electric vehicles. And now when you throw data centers on top of the mix, it's not making it any better. So bigwigs need to really amp up the energy game and figure out a better way to produce energy. And I feel like that is where we're lacking right now in this department. But it's because of greed that it's like that. Because these data centers need to use energy, and the energy providers need fuel, and the fuel providers want to sell it all. So it's just a vicious, greedy cycle right now that's really hurting a lot of people, except the elites or the top shelf pieces of trash. And it really sucks to see that there's people in power over these states that's allowing this to happen, because more than likely they're getting paid off to do so. Overall though, the rant is, it's not just data centers, that's a big play in it right now, but there's also other electrical services that's weighing down the grid as well, that I think a lot of people are actually not thinking about. Let me know your thoughts and theories on this one.
People don't know how insidious and how involved witchcraft is in our world. They're totally blind to it. Like the root word, our English language is an occultic language. It's witch tongue, actually. We are speaking, this is witch tongue. And it comes from English, which is angelish, which is the fallen angels that had sex with the women and bore the Nephilim, which is these giants that were perversions of God's creation. And it derives from Anglo-Saxon, supposedly, which is Anglo, which is angelo, okay? And Saxon is sexon, it's sect. It means part of, angel, sex. But the Google will tell you, no, Anglo means angler. It means a fisherman. It means a part of a fisherman. That's what it means. No, it doesn't. But here's the thing, like, it is intentionally created language to deceive you. That's why this language is called grammar and spelling. Do you know what spelling means? It means spell casting. Do you know what grammar means? Grammar is the root word grimoire. And if you type into etymology.com, type in etymology of grammar, it will tell you it means mumbo jumbo, witchcraft, incantation, spells. Grammar is the root word for witchcraft. It's where we get like Grimm, like the Brothers Grimm, or the Grimm fairy tales, or grimoire is the old books of witchcraft. That's what they were saved in. Okay, so Grimm gram, this word is witchcraft. That's why it's called Instagram, Telegram. They're telling you instant witchcraft. That's why I had you take all the skulls out, by the way.
I was
Like,
gonna
I
get
don't
to that.
freaking, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want that stuff in there because it's like, I'll do your podcast, sure, bro. We'll talk, but like, get that skull stuff out of here. Get this stuff out of the background. That's not of God. It's not love. It's death, bro.
Honestly, I think that there's spellcasting in all languages. Is English a more pronounced version of it? Maybe, but I think that spellcasting is more or less an all language type of thing and not just focused on English. I do believe that there is meaning behind certain words and why they are the way they are. Now, does that actually cause some kind of effect against you, or does it actually benefit them? That I'm not certain of, but I do think psychologically it does, in a way that it could be egotistical and or it could be spiritual. It's just really hard to tell. And when I was a kid, I used to feel the same way about cursive writing. I thought cursive was literally like witchcraft in writing. I always felt a little off about writing in which I almost called it witchcraft right then and there. I always felt a little off about writing in cursive because it just felt weird to me, but I'm used to it now. Let me know your thoughts and theories on this one.
Okay, hold on a second. If you have not heard this theory about petrified trees, this one is in Arizona's Petrified Forest National Park. If you've not heard this theory, you may be completely mind blown, and you might be thinking about this for weeks after hearing this alternative idea of where these possibly came from and what they actually are. So the mainstream story is that this was a giant tree, or rather just a pretty big tree, that petrified over bajillions or millions or something of years. Okay, that's the official story. Wood turning into stone, which doesn't generally happen today. Usually it rots. A carbon-based thing usually rots. This thing turned to stone, apparently. But here's the crazy part. You know how there's giant cliffs and mountains which seemingly appear to be, like, I'm talking, ancient giant tree stumps, right? We got Devil's Tower, of course. Officially this is a basalt column. It's from hardening magma and whatnot. But what if the Petrified Forest National Park and other petrified trees around the world were the branches of the ancient giant trees that were cut down by the angels, which is what they said. They sent angels down to earth to cut down. God sent angels down, cut down the trees, so that when they flood the earth, the giants can't climb the trees and survive the flood. What if tabletop mountains are ancient giant tree stumps? I'm just saying, what if? And what if these are the branches or little twigs of these giant trees? And if you're in Edmonton, go to the government house off of 102 Ave Northwest. And in the parking lot, you'll see an unassuming tree stump. You think it's just a tree stump, right? No, dude, it's petrified. This was a little baby tree back in the day when the giant trees of silicon, were they made of stone? I don't know. But check that out. They say it's millions of years old. Is that true? I don't know.
You have to admit that some of those really do look like gargantuan tree stumps. And it's an interesting theory. I really like it, but I feel like if they were cut down by angels, there would be some kind of aftermath. We would see the equipment. There would probably even be more destruction. I mean, we're talking about a mountain-sized stump that is just the stump of a tree that was much larger. There should be more than just some branches here and there. Now, I have heard some theories that the wood from these gargantuan trees were actually repurposed and used, and that's an actual good theory as well. So I never really overrule the idea that some of these mountains could potentially be actual tree stumps.
So this one's a weird one. This is coming from a couple of friends who noticed something odd in the sky. Not a typical UFO or an unidentified object. This is a very well-known object. They saw literally a flying car. Take a look at this video, comment below, let us know what you think.
Fog is going away. What is it? Oh my god, is it a car? What? What the is that? It's a car! What the is that?
That's just Ron and Harry on their way to Hogwarts.
I feel happy. I feel healthy. I'm a human being.
Same here, man. Same here. Alright guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end today's video. As always, I want to thank you guys for watching these clips with me. With that, I feel happy, I feel healthy, I'm doing my best, And if today's your birthday, happy birthday, and if not, have a good day anyways.